For almost 60 years in this country, a police officer, a doctor, a health official, or basically any man with enough authority to decide that a woman looks suspicious, his word was enough to get her locked up. No trial, no jury, no conviction. Just a man's suspicion. Woodrow Wilson signed it into law. Franklin Roosevelt expanded it. A future Supreme Court justice helped enforce it. And tens of thousands of women paid the price. It was called the American Plan, and the more I learned about it, the angrier I got. Because when we talk about women losing autonomy in this country, people act like those conversations just started yesterday. But they didn't, did they? This country has been testing how much control it could exercise over women's bodies for a long time. Starting in 1918, states across the country began adopting laws pushed by the federal government. On paper, these laws were supposed to stop the spread of sexually transmitted infections, STIs. Sounds reasonable, right? That's how they sold it. But in practice, it meant that women could be detained, forcibly examined, and locked away indefinitely if authorities suspected that they might have an STI. Not proved. Suspected. Now, here's what gets me, right? A woman could get picked up for walking alone, for being out at night, for sitting in a restaurant by herself, for carrying condoms, for changing jobs too often, for being in the wrong neighborhood, for being poor, for being black, for being an immigrant, for being a woman without a man standing next to her. The law was strictly gender neutral, but somehow it was women filling those cells. Funny how that works. One of those women was 18-year-old Nina McCall, and her story is the reason why we know so much about this thing today. Nina got a letter telling her to report to a health officer. So she went, because what else was she supposed to do? The doctor performed an invasive exam and claimed that she had gonorrhea. Nina insisted that she didn't, but it didn't matter. They locked her up anyway for nearly 3 months. She was forced to do labor, undergo treatments. And here's where it gets even more sinister. Right? This was before antibiotics. The treatments included mercury and arsenic compounds, poison. The people running these facilities knew that these treatments could permanently harm women. But of course, they kept doing it anyway. 'Cause fuck us, right? And before you think the women just accepted this, absolutely not. They didn't. They fought back constantly. They rioted. They escaped. They tore through fences. They tied those guards up with bed sheets. Yes, ma'am. They sued. However, most of us have never heard these stories because we were never taught them, right? Now what really pisses me off is who was supporting all of this. Not some fringe extremists, not people history books warn you about. People we're taught to respect, right? Presidents, governors, mayors, federal officials. The kind of people who would have called themselves reasonable. The kind of people who would have insisted that they were acting in public interests. The kind of people who always seem to show up when someone else's rights are on the chopping block. Now, I want to talk to the women watching this just for a second. Because I think we're taught to believe that if something is outrageous enough, it can't happen here. That if something violates basic rights enough, somebody would stop it, right? Somebody's going to speak up, somebody will intervene. But tens of thousands of women lived through this. Not centuries ago, not in some distant empire. Here, in the United States of America, the laws existed, the facilities existed, the records exist. And what gets me is how thoroughly it disappeared from the conversation. Because this country didn't really reckon with it, right? It didn't really apologize for it. It mostly just stopped talking about it. And I think that's why stories like this matter. Because if we don't remember what our government has already done to women, it becomes a lot easier to pretend that they never would. And history has a funny way of proving that assumption wrong.